Hey,
Hi, I'm
Ariana.
Ariana. Nice to meet you.
You too.
To get started, how did you get into stand up in the first place?
Okay, in the first place, so I was doing improv in college, and then I moved to New York to do more comedy. So I kept doing improv at UCB in New York, but I felt maybe a little bit like, okay, I'm ready to also try something else because I'd been doing improv for so long in college, and I was like, okay, why don't we see what else there is? And so I decided to start trying stand up and going to a lot of open mics and just experiencing the underground sort of stand-up culture of New York and getting to my first mic, being around all other comedians. I felt very like, this is nice. I can speak. We're all speaking the same language. It felt very cool. Like we were all just, I had this feeling of like, oh, there's usually one person at a party where I connect with where I'm like, oh, we speak the same language. And to be at an open mic, it was like, oh, we're all speaking in this way. We're all doing bits. And so I stuck and I stayed.
For sure. So you did a lot of YouTube videos
Yes.
impersonating your mom. What's the difference for you of doing stand up and say YouTube or other acting?
Totally. They're very different in that I would say YouTube and acting and characters is sort of like putting something on top of my being. So my being is still there underneath it, but I'm putting something on top and I'm acting as someone else. I'm taking on someone else's attributes. I'm acting as a different person. Yeah, I'm outside of myself in a way that's really fun. I put on my mom wig. I know exactly who I am. I'm her. For that moment, I'm fully my mom and I get to react to everything the way she would. With stand up, it's almost the opposite. It's like you take everything off. You take everything off and it's just you at your core and you're being honest and you're being yourself and there's nothing between you and the audience. It's just you guys there together. So it's a very different, more intimate experience where it's like they're getting to know me and I'm right there with them. Whereas acting, it's more I'm someone else and I'm behind a screen. Yeah.
For sure. So with this stand-up special, you're talking about probably the most personal thing that has ever happened to you, your father passing. How was it like to handle any of those emotions that could come up in a stand-up that's an hour and you're going to be on stage that entire time?
Right. Yeah. It went on a journey. I think at first it was super cathartic and it just felt like, oh, I'm so grateful to be talking about this and to be getting this off my chest. And then it probably had dips of, oh, I have to revisit this painful experience and that's a bit hard. And then towards the end, I think it landed in a more, because I was talking about something that happened so long ago. Once I was in that space, I was able to more look at it as a slightly more outsider and talk about an experience that happened versus being so close to the experience that me and it were maybe a bit too close. So by the end, I feel like it was easier to manage because I had more distance from it. And I was talking about something in the past versus something that I was still processing.
For sure. And how did your family receive this show?
They're great sports. They were at the first one ever. I remember my mom came in from Mass and my brother was there and his wife was there. And yeah, they're really good sports about it and they like it. And my aunt has come a bunch of times. And I think for cousins and aunts, a lot of people in my family miss my dad. He was such a fun guy and he was the guy at parties to bring everyone together during the holidays to put on a skit or to make up some game and do a prank, whatever it was. So I think in a way it's been fun doing the show and getting to see old family members because they want to hang out with my dad and talk about my dad too. So it's been nice.
For sure. So there's an element in the show where you're kind of showing the physical transformation of your dad and his illness through walking and movement. How did you
Yeah.
come up with that idea? And do you have a background in dancing or any form of movement?
Yes. So I danced growing up. I danced for 7 years at Shannon Brand School of Dance in Seekonk, Mass. And I ran and then I was a runner. So I ran all through high school and a bit of college. So movement has always been a big piece of my life. And now I walk every day. Movement is very important to me. And it is very important to my relationship with my dad. We moved together. That was a big part of what we did. So I just remember like seeing that. I don't quite know. It was one of the first elements I had when I decided instead of this just being stand up, I would like to make this a show. That was the first sort of element I had in my head. I don't quite remember how it got there, but I think it was just sort of like I'd been living in it and I've been watching it, and it felt almost just like I live in my mom and dad's old house is just like in a loop. So there's a loop, maybe a half-mile loop around my house. And we just walked and ran that a lot. So maybe something about seeing that loop to me and watching how my dad and I used to sprint that and then jog and then slow. So it might have been that location of where I lived brought it into my head.
For sure. And so this stand-up is obviously on Peacock. What goes behind the scenes of having a good 60-minute stand-up, especially a recorded one, from kind of beginning to end?
Yeah, a lot takes place definitely between those things. A lot of amazing people and amazing talent help that happen. A lot of the road is focusing on just the words and the set and the comedy and the arc of the show. And then at a certain point, once that feels semi-locked, then it becomes like, okay, how do we translate this is a live performance that I've been doing in small theaters. How do we take that and make that a performance for screen? And I loved I have an all-female EP team, Art and Industry, and Jenny Church Cooper. And that was the starting team. And then from there, with Peacock, with Megan Deneen and Mike DiCenzo and Katie Hockmeyer, all of us together started building out a team of just pros. And we brought on Lance Bangs to direct, and he was wonderful and had so much experience and vision and helped create what you see behind me and all the shots and the flow of the show. And Christine Ng was an incredible DP and got really active, cool shots of me. So it was almost like, I had this part, and then once it became time to go to the taped version, it was like, okay, let's bring in a team of amazing people who are all really great at their jobs to handle all the other elements that I don't know how to do. Yeah.
How did you come up with the title, No Bad Days?
That was also just a very early title. My dad was really adamant about people saying like that. He was really like, it's not a bad day. There's no such thing as a bad day. If you're alive and you're awake, he was my whole life. That was his thing, he always found something good in bad days. And I don't know if I knew how rare that was or how much he meant that until I went through this experience. Watching him maintain that mentality through his sickness and death was just, extremely impactful to me, where I was like, oh, that not only did I live a whole life with that mentality from him, but now I watched that he held on to that all the way till the end. So now I have to carry that on. I wasn't doing that. And now it's like, it's my job to carry that on forward. And so that's where the name came from.
Yeah. So there's a point in the show where you asked if someone has lost a loved one, and obviously like a lot of hands go up. Have you ever had any fan interaction where they expressed how much the show meant to them or any similar experience?
Yeah, that's got to be the most rewarding part of the show, is like, especially with that hand raising part, even locking eyes with people when they raise their hands always moves me. It's something about just, you look in someone's eyes as they raise their hand and you're raising yours. And it's like, there's this silent thing of like, I know you and I see you and I get that we have this thing in common. That show it goes from being a show like where I'm alone up there to like, oh no, we're all in this together because everyone here is sharing with me that they feel something similar. And so, yeah, when people were kind enough to share with me their loss or their experiences with grief afterwards, it always felt extremely comforting and extremely rewarding, and just like, oh, great, we're in this together, and I'm glad that you are able to talk to me about this, and now we can chat. Because otherwise, a stranger coming up to you, it just wouldn't happen. They wouldn't come up to you and talk to you about they wouldn't. And I have close friends it took me years to know that they lost someone close to them. It's just something that we don't talk about as much. But once one person initiates and then another person comes through, then all of a sudden we're all having a convo about our past loved ones. Yeah.
For sure. And during the show, you announced this is the last time you're going to be doing this particular show. How did you come to that decision? And by the time you came to the decision, how much time did you actually take action on that decision? You're like, this is actually it. Like, this is going to be the last one.
Yeah. Well, that part of the show was my like sort of conclusion that I kept changing as the show went on. So it didn't always start as that. It had other conclusions that are still in there, but other little pieces. And then as the days were getting closer, my heart started getting like heavy, and I started really fearing oh my gosh, I have to let go of the show. Because stand-ups usually once material's out there, you don't do it again. It's just sort of how it goes. So I started realizing, oh gosh, this means like I really have to let go of this. Like I started looking at the amount of times I had left with it, and it was almost like the amount of times I had left with my dad, and it made me feel really sad. And then I was like, well, that's it. That's what I'm feeling then. That's the final thing. And so then I stuck probably for 4 shows with that ending. I wouldn't say this is my last show. I'd say I have 3 more shows or 2 more shows or 1 more show. Yeah.
You had mentioned in the show that you were kind of afraid to let it go because it was, I won't say the final chapter, but like another chapter of life moving on without your dad physically there. Now that has happened, was it as scary as it kind of seemed at the time?
I don't think so. I think it's just a bit bittersweet. It's just life. It's like, I think what the show helped me with was realize, like, though it is scary to let go of this chapter, almost by workshopping this show and spending time with the show, it reminded me just how close my dad is to me, and in my life, in my everyday, how much my dad has pushed me to where I am and where I'll be tomorrow. So in a way, because of that discovery, the letting go is a little bit easier because I'm reminded of just how much he is with me. But it is still scary and sad to just be done with this chapter, because it was a wonderful added chapter of time I got with my dad, sort of bonus time that I got with him. Yeah.
For sure. So what's next with the source material? Like you mentioned your dad had passed away, I think it was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So now there's some more life and even more life ahead. What's next that you want to explore with your stand-up?
Yeah. So I'm excited about what's next in general. I'm acting in the show Flatbush Misdemeanors right now, which is out on Showtime. And that was a really fun, gritty, funny role where I got to play an addict who's funny and going through a tough time. And that show's so spectacular that I loved working on that. And I feel when I think towards my next projects, it's just, what is the next artistic pursuit I want to do? So it might be stand-up. And if it is, it'll likely be in this same vein of something I want to say that's honest and dark and serious, but that I make funny. But also I wrote a movie with my friend May with 42 production company, and I have TV development projects. So it's just kind of going to be a matter of what avenue I go in next. But if it's stand-up, it will definitely stay in this vein of serious topics with some levity.
For sure. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of have this very vulnerable conversation with me, even though you've done it with the stand-up as well. I really appreciate it, and I wish you best of luck with this and your future things.
Of course, I really appreciate you taking the time and watching the show.
Oh, will do. Oh, I
Thank
did.
you.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.